And by the way, I'm not saying this is another .com. I'm just saying past history of bull markets, when they collapse, we get these meteoric bounces that are almost equal. I think a spot ETF is a huge game changer. But when you have a company that manages what, $11 trillion and is that close to the government, you can't tell me that they didn't consult the SEC and say, hey, can we launch this? So there's no doubt that I've been surprised by the move up that we've seen in the tech stocks. So especially large cap tech, that's been carrying this whole entire move. And interestingly enough, you could see this move on the NASDAQ and how vertical it's been. But if you look at the RSP, and this is kind of very telling, this is the equal weight S&P 500. Look at the equal weight S&P 500. So again, you can see that we're still sideways overall in the S&P when you take all the stocks, the 500 stocks at equal weights versus the way the indices are structured, where the market caps are the bigger the market cap, the bigger the weighting. So what that tells us is that there's been a handful of stocks that have been leading this charge higher, the NVIDIAs of the world, the Teslas of the world, the Microsofts, the Apples, etc., the trillion-dollar companies essentially. So I'm still somewhat skeptical. So if you look at the NASDAQ composite, right, from the lows, we're about 38% to the upside. All right, so that's the low on the NASDAQ. We actually fell 38%. We've rallied back 38%. Now, if we go to the weekly chart and I scroll back to the .com bubble, this is kind of interesting here. In the .com bubble, we collapsed 41%. We rallied 41% before the downside came back in. And we obviously went down about 80, 75, 80% after that. And by the way, I'm not saying this is another .com. I'm just saying past history of bull markets, when they collapse, we get these meteoric bounces that are almost equal. And again, to look at the .com and see a 41% drop and then a 41% bounce before we dropped 80 more percent, that's powerful. In 1929, the markets collapsed 50%. We rallied 52%, and then the Great Depression took over. So again, let's be clear. The markets have been making me wrong for the last month or two. There's no doubt about it. I've been surprised by how much money has flown into some of these mega cap stocks and how much the markets have rallied to the upside. But having said that, you have a Fed that's saying now they're going to tighten 2 more times the rest of the year. The market wasn't prepared for that. We're now going into a quiet period where the stock market, individual stocks that are doing buybacks, they can't buy now going into earnings. So I'm interested to see that. And then you also have data like the jobless claims, which was for the first time, we saw the biggest jump 2 weeks ago of jobless claims, which is people filing for unemployment, that we have seen since 2021. If we do see negative news, then the stock market likely will come back in. Having said that, could we go up a little bit more? There's always that chance. So I'm short. I'm relatively heavily short at this point. But I think a spot ETF is a huge game changer to allow retail to kind of fully get in. And when I'm not talking about retail crypto people, we're already in, right? It's about the other people that are maybe a little on the older side, where it starts to give confidence, right? So we saw the futures ETF come out. That was even in the bull market, and we saw the collapse. So it doesn't mean you can't have bear markets when you have a spot ETF. But what it does is it's basically saying that the government, the SEC, is giving the green light. And the reason I say that, and you can say, well, it's not approved yet, so why are they giving the green light? But when you have a company that manages what, $11 trillion and is that close to the government, you can't tell me that they didn't consult the SEC and say, hey, can we launch this ETF? And what this is doing, by the way, this is separating. You see Bitcoin dominance breaking out in this scenario as people start to say, okay, the SEC is fine with Bitcoin. Bitcoin will remain as is going forward. Therefore, it's safer to invest in Bitcoin. And so again, I do think it's a positive for Bitcoin itself. I think the alts are still another story here because again, we just don't know the rules for the altcoins. This chart is an awesome chart right now, and I simplified it. We're now in a downward channel, right? So parallel lines that we've been down at. Notice we're right up at that upper area. So this is this week, the next few days will be very, very key for Bitcoin. Can it break out? If it breaks out of here, I think it goes back to 30,500 and retests that resistance level. If it can't, then you're coming down to this downslope, this upsloping trend line. Do we break below that, and do we head down to 23 to 24,000? So this is, again, to be honest, it's hard to know. which way it's going to go here in the next few days. But if you can break above this blue line, which is around 27,250, I think that's where you get momentum to come in even more so and carry it towards that 30,000. Just to be fair, so I had my Ethereum, one of the shorts that I already covered this one, right? So Ethereum, when it came down right here to this low level to see this trend line, this was that same connector trend line that we saw on Bitcoin. Just Bitcoin hasn't well, it kissed it as well. But I took that off the table, and so I'm no longer short Ethereum because of that. So far, that's been a good call. I still have my Bitcoin short out there, but I will say this: if we break above this, I'm going to cover it. All right. Now that'll be a small profit. I'll make about 3,000, $2,500 on it, which is fine. You don't make $1 million on every trade, but I don't think I'll go long yet. I need to see what happens with regulation, and I need to see what happens at the 30,000 level. I think if you just look at the overall chart, you can see that. Look at this pivot low going back to 2018, and if you connect it through these, you get the lows in 2022 in terms of Bitcoin dominance. And then you could also argue, look at all these highs and how we're just breaking out here. So I think again, you can use this as a chart. I think that Bitcoin dominance has upside probably over the next 6 months towards this level here, which is around 57%, and this downsloping level, which will take it right in that same area. So I think Bitcoin dominance gets to about 57 to 60%.